My heart shattered when she said, "Mommy's sick, but she'll still smile if you come." I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt heavier that afternoon, thick with unspoken fears and lingering shadows. I stood frozen, feeling the words wrap around my throat, choking me. My little sister, Lila, her innocent face aglow with hope, didn't understand the weight of sick. 8 years old and blissfully unaware of the monster lurking in the corners of our lives. Tears threatened to spill down my cheeks as she tugged at my sleeve, her tiny fingers trembling. There was a chill in the hospital building, an eerie stillness that swallowed every sound. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry bees, their relentless hum cutting through the sterile silence. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead, I forced a smile, as if my feigned courage could shield her from the truth. Mommy had always been my rock. The heart of our small family. She used to tell us stories that danced with magic, that whisked us away to far-off lands. Now, her laughter had faded and been replaced with something hollow, a mere echo of what it once was. I wondered if her smile still held that warmth, or if it was just a fragile facade meant to reassure Lila. I glanced around the waiting area, the buzzing fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across anxious faces. I spotted a mother cradling a child wrapped in bandages, his tiny frame frail and fragile. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the sour tang of fear seeped into my skin. Somewhere beyond those walls, life was carrying on without us. "No, Lila, I'm not ready yet," I whispered, feeling a lump in my throat. How could I possibly explain that Mommy was not the same? That life had twisted and contorted into something unrecognizable, painted in shades of gray? Lila's eyes sparkled even in the gloom, her faith as stubborn as the sun breaking through thick clouds. What if I couldn't hold it together? What if, the moment I stepped into that room, the weight of everything crashed on me like an avalanche? My heart raced. Each beat was a reminder of what could be lost. We finally made it to her room. The door loomed large, a barrier between hope and despair. I hesitated, my hand hovering above the doorknob. I could hear the soft beeping of machines inside, steady yet foreboding. I took a deep breath. What awaited us behind that door? I turned the knob slowly, the squeak strangely loud. Inside, the room felt simultaneously intimate and foreign. Monitors blinked with sterile rhythm, and there was Mommy, pale and fragile, lying there like a forgotten statue. But as soon as she turned her head and met our eyes, her lips curled into a shaky smile. "Lila, I'm so glad you're here." It was a brave performance, but I could see the weariness behind her eyes, the struggle she fought silently. "Mommy, you're gonna be okay, right?" The way Lila asked it cut through me like glass. Her smile faltered for a split second, a flicker of something unnameable in her gaze. The air grew thick with tension. I felt a physical force weighing down my chest as I awaited her answer. "Of course, sweetie, I just need some time." Could a smile really mask the truth? Lila was blissfully clutching onto hope, but I caught the shadows lurking behind her innocence, growing fainter like the light in our lives. As Lila skipped forward, I took a shaky step back. My heart raced with a myriad of questions. Would this be our last moment together? The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. Why was she hiding something? What could be lurking beneath that fragile exterior? Footsteps echoed down the hall. The sound grew louder, drowning out the spinning thoughts in my head. Suddenly, an unsettling realization washed over me. What if this time, hope would not be enough? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The doctor's footsteps drew closer, echoing my growing dread. I couldn't help but notice the way Lila's laughter bounced off the hospital walls, a sound so pure, so untouched by the reality enveloping us. I watched her play with the hem of Mommy's blanket, her small fingers clinging to the soft fabric as if it were a lifeline. My pulse quickened. I desperately wanted to reach out to Mommy, to feel her warmth and reassurance, but a tidal wave of fear held me back. Is it time for her medicine? Lila chirped, her cherubic face bright with the simplest of hopes. Mommy's smile remained, but her eyes flickered with an imperceptible sadness. Yes, sweetheart, imagine a superhero coming to rescue me, she reassured, her voice strained yet comforting. My heart clenched. Could this really be the best we could hope for? A facade, dressed in pretend heroics, as the doctor entered, I braced myself for the onslaught of medical jargon that seemed to swirl around us like smoke dense and suffocating. Dr. Morales, her expression revealing nothing, spoke kindness wrapped in careful words, yet I could see the weight carried in her gaze. Linda, it's important to be honest about your condition. The words hung heavily in the air, and I instinctively turned to Lila. She was blissfully jumping from one word to the next a few steps away, oblivious to the conversation that could unravel everything we held dear. The doctor's voice drifted in and out, like the sound of waves crashing against a distant shore. Treatment options have narrowed. One may have to consider palliative care. I felt a painful twist deep within my sharp, cold grip. Palliative care felt like a loaded term, one that hinted at terrifying possibilities lurking just beyond sight. My fingers trembled against the cold metal of the hospital bed. I wanted to scream, to tell them to stop talking about options that didn't involve hope as part of the equation. Then, in the midst of my spiraling thoughts, a small hand slipped into mine. I looked down to find Lila holding my hand, her innocent touch grounding me as she whispered, "Will Mommy be okay?" I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. Of course she will, yet I felt the hollowness of my words, the tremor of uncertainty that lurked beneath. Would it ever be okay again? After the doctor left, silence enveloped the room once more. Lila had climbed into bed beside Mommy, curling up against her, her head resting on Mommy's shoulder. My heart twisted with the simplicity of their interaction, the way Lila fit into the crook of Mommy's arm perfectly, like a missing piece of a puzzle. I could see the sheer love wrapped in that moment, and it shattered me all over again. I remembered the last birthday we celebrated together, a joyful afternoon filled with cake and laughter, when Mommy had spun Lila around until they both collapsed onto the grass, giggling in the warmth of the sun. How did we go from that to this heavy cloud of uncertainty? My heart ached with the weight of time slipping through our fingers. I settled in a chair in the corner, hoping to remain invisible. Watching them was both a comfort and a torment. Lila was saying something to Mommy, whispering secrets, all the things a daughter should say to her supermom. "Will you still tell me stories, even if you get better?" she asked, wide-eyed and sincere. Mommy's smile faltered for just a brief moment. But then she breathed deeply, her voice steadying as she answered, "Of course, my sweet girl. We'll make up stories about brave knights and magical lands. Just you and I. A great adventure." As Lila's eyes sparkled with delight, I was struck by a sudden unshakable urge to protect this moment, to freeze time and hold on to the laughter and warmth that seemed so fragile now. But as I looked closer, I caught a brief flicker of something in Mommy's eyes. Was it fear? Dread? Suddenly, a nurse popped her head in. "I'm so sorry, but we need to keep the room quiet. Linda needs her rest." Just as she stepped away, the lights flickered. A low rumble echoed through the hallway outside. I sensed something ominous lurking beyond the walls of this sanctum. My heart raced again as emotions swirled within me, the cocoon of security unraveling at the seams. "Lila, come here," I urged quietly. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming for us, uninvited and unwelcome. As Lila settled next to me, I leaned in and gently whispered, "We need to be strong, okay?" For Mommy, her nod was slight, but I could see the understanding in her otherwise innocent gaze. I held her close, fearing the unknown ahead. And then, just as my thoughts danced with darkness, I noticed Lila's tiny hand grasp something from her pocket, a slip of paper folded and crumpled. She pulled it out and stared at it, eyes wide with some burgeoning revelation. "What's that?" I asked, half afraid to know. With a determined voice she said, "It's our secret magic map." But before she could unfold it, the lights flickered again, followed by a loud crash that came from down the hall. I felt a chill race down my spine. What was happening? In that moment, everything changed. I could feel the tide of our reality shifting, like the air before a storm. I turned to Mommy, searching for assurance, for any sign that everything would be okay. But I found her eyes, filled not with reassurance but with a desperate plea. "Please, just promise me," she breathed softly, her voice trembling, "that you'll always stick together." And in that moment, a gut-wrenching fear clouded me, a realization that whatever storm was on our doorstep, it was not only threatening to uproot our family but hide deeper truths beneath its chaotic facade. The world outside our fragile cocoon was breaking, and with it, the fears I desperately tried to suppress came crashing down. We exchanged a look, a silent understanding. I clutched Lila tighter as the lights flickered once more, apprehension slithering in the silence. What if this was just the beginning? The hospital's chaos was like a distant storm rumbling beneath our feet, unsettling and ever-present. I held Lila close, the warmth of her small body a flickering flame against the frost that crept into my heart. The hum of machines provided an eerie symphony of beeps and hisses, a stark reminder that life, in all its fragility, fought valiantly within these walls. Lila's little fingers traced patterns across my arm, a distraction from the mounting dread. "Can we go on a real adventure this time?" she asked, her voice laced with a mixture of naivete and hope. I put on the bravest smile I could muster, but inside, my heart shattered a little more. How could I promise her that? We were sinking deeper into uncertainty, and I felt outrageously unprepared. Yet her unwavering belief in those stories, in magic maps and brave knights, was like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. "Absolutely," I replied, trying to inject enthusiasm into my tone. "But let's finish the one we started." She beamed, temporarily lost in our shared realm of fantasy where the slings of reality could be cast aside. But as I gazed into her joyful eyes, a gnawing fear tangled with that flicker of hope. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. Palliative care. It was almost like a shadow lurking at the edges of her laughter, a constant reminder of what we were fighting against. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed again from down the hall, drawing my focus away from Lila. Panic welled up inside me, squeezing my chest tight. Disoriented, I cast a quick glance at Mommy. Her eyes were still closed, her breathing steady but shallow, a deepening contrast to the disarray around us. Panic set deeper when I saw a team of doctors rush past our door, carrying equipment and walking with a purpose that left little room for hesitation. My heart sank. What if they were coming for Mommy? Every instinct screamed at me to follow them, to demand answers, to question the chaos unraveling outside our sanctuary. "Stay here," I murmured to Lila, my voice firm yet gentle. I squeezed her small hand before reluctantly releasing it. "I'll be right back." As I stepped into the hallway, the scene unfolded like a nightmare. Nurses moved swiftly, faces drawn and tense, while a few family members huddled in small groups, eyes filled with uncertainty and terror. I pressed through the throngs of wild emotions, straining to catch snippets of fragmented conversations, heart rate dropping, me destabilized. Code blue, the terms churned in my brain, twisting the knife deeper. I wanted to flee, to run back to Lila and Mommy, to hoist them out of the storm. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, one of the nurses caught my eye. Her name tag read Megan. She recognized my look of desperation and rushed over, her presence providing the slightest reprieve from my spiraling dread. "Is everything okay?" I stammered, gripping her arm as fear flooded my voice. She hesitated for a heartbeat, her gaze slipping past into the dim hallway, where the bustle continued unabated. "We're doing everything we can. Linda has a strong will," she replied, her words a thin thread of hope woven between the tension. I could feel my heart thump hastily against my ribcage. Was it enough? Was Mommy really fighting? I sought comfort among the images swirling in my mind, of laughter shared, moments treasured, and love that seemed so much more potent in this fragile space. Can you just tell her that Lila needs her? That her stories can't end just yet?" Megan's expression softened. "Of course," she promised, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of kindness in her troubled eyes. It felt like a candle igniting in the dark, offering a glimmer of solace. I turned to head back to the room when another loud noise went off, a scream echoing down the corridor, brittle and laced with anguish. Adrenaline surged through me, an electric panic pushing me forward. Bursting back into the room, I found Lila still snuggled beside Mommy, who looked more fragile than I had ever seen her. A nurse was adjusting 4 lines while a doctor scribbled on a chart, the hum of their conversations fading into a murmur. The suffocating tension hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Then, it happened. A gasp from Lila as her tiny hand slipped into the pocket of Mommy's gown. "Mommy, I found the magic map!" She squealed, pulling it out triumphantly. I felt my breath stutter. Wait, Lila, not here, I started, but I couldn't hide the growing flood of curiosity. What was this map that seemed to hold so much importance in her mind? As she unfolded the crumpled paper carefully, its edges bent and worn, the room dimmed momentarily, the lights flickering again. Then a whisper, barely heard above the storm of beeping machines, fell from her lips. If we follow this, it leads to the most beautiful place where Mommy can smile. Mommy's eyes flickered open, the weariness being washed momentarily away by the glow of Lila's excitement. But in my heart, dread sizzled with curiosity, igniting a deeper fear of what this map truly meant. As the doctor finished their notes and the whirlwind in the hall seemed to recede, Lila held the map high, her voice ringing with youthful certainty. Let's go, Mommy. But before any words escaped my lips, the world around us transformed. I noticed a shadow linger at the door, a figure that sent a chill racing up my spine. Someone was watching us, a face I instinctively knew yet could not believe. What hidden truths lay behind that familiar visage, and what storm was brewing just beyond the tentative grasp of hope? Time felt suspended as we exchanged a glance, realization dawning like a spark that could ignite a roaring fire. Would love, in the face of such a looming threat, be enough? My heart raced as the figure stepped forward. I came to help, they said, but every instinct screamed that we were no longer just fighting for Mommy, we were wrestling against something much larger. The moment hung between us, tense and vibrating with the weight of unspoken words. My heart pounded louder than the cacophony of the hospital, drowning in the tumult of emotions. The figure at the door, half hidden in shadow, stepped forward, and I felt as if the air had gone still, holding its breath with me. Kai? The name slipped out before I could rein it back, laced with equal parts recognition and disbelief. It had been years since I had last seen him, years that were packed with bitter memories and unresolved grievances. The way he stood there, framed by the harsh glare of the fluorescent lights, transformed the anxiety in my chest into something heavier, a burden of past ties reminding me why they had been severed. Kai, I repeated, bracing myself. You shouldn't be here, Lila, okay? He asked, brushing aside my words with urgency. His gaze flickered from me to Lila, his expression morphed by layers of concern. Despite my internal resistance, seeing that flicker of genuine worry in his eyes almost softened the edges of my anger. Almost, yes, she's okay for now, I stammered, desperate to protect Lila from whatever storm was brewing between us. But Mommy, I know, he interrupted, stepping further inside, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for answers hidden in the sterile walls. I heard what happened. I just want to help? I scoffed, the disbelief pouring out like acid. Where were you when it mattered? When she needed you? Memories flooded back, of a younger me standing in the rain with a heart full of questions he never answered, of a friendship lost beneath a mountain of unresolved feelings. And Megan, lingering just outside, must have sensed the tension because she shifted uncertainly, ready to chip in should things escalate. I turned to her, silently pleading for her to intervene, unsure if I even wanted Kai in this room, let alone in Lila's life. But Lila, innocent and pure, now stood before us, her magic map still clutched tightly in her small hands. She glanced back and forth between us, confusion etching her young features. Mommy needs to smile. Can you help? Her innocence pierced through the tension like a ray of sunlight, shading the darkness that threatened to close in around us. Still I swallowed hard, willing to soften but still anchored in my anger. What do you want from us, Kai? I demanded, my voice shaking. Just because you suddenly care doesn't mean everything can go back to how it was. You left. He opened his mouth to retort but paused, considering something beyond our exchange. I left to protect you all from me, he murmured, his tone laced with pain. You don't know what I've been through. But I came back because I can't stand by and do nothing. A small spark of something guilt flickered in my heart. And what can you really do? I challenged him, slow to let go, fearful of how easily Lila believed in the goodness in others. She had never witnessed our history, she saw only the man standing before her in her hour of need. Kai took a breath, his demeanor shifting from defensive to earnest. I have connections, he replied, voice steady. Doctors, specialists, people who might be able to help Linda. I can raise funds, organize a campaign, but why should we trust you? I countered, every instinct screaming at me to shut him out. You had your chance, and you didn't take it. In that moment, Lila stepped forward, clutching the map tighter. But people can change, right? Just like how trees grow back healthier after storms, her belief seemed to hang in the air, fragile yet profound, tearing at the fabric of my resolve. I wanted to deny her simplicity, wanted to hold tightly to the past where trust had been broken. Yet, the forlorn look on her face forced me to reconsider. Before I could respond, one of the machines beside Mommy beeped erratically, drawing everyone's attention back to the frightening reality before us. Panic surged through me. It became all too clear that time was running out. The doctor rushed back in, her expression a mixture of alert and strained. "Status update," she barked, adrenaline filling the air between us. "We need another round of fluids, and I want to assess her vitals again in 5 days." In that moment of chaos, Lila looked at me, her eyes shining with unshed hope. "Mommy will smile, won't she?" It was a simple question, yet it burned under the pressure of everything unspoken. What if the map wasn't just a child's whimsical creation but a beacon of hope in our desperate situation? I faced Kai again, feeling the weight of Lila's gaze like a tether binding us all together. "If you really want to help," my voice cracked, the prospect of vulnerability cutting through the anger. "Then prove it." The moment swayed on the precipice of unknowing, as Kai nodded, determination igniting in his eyes. "I will. I promise." But before I could question how genuine his pledge was, a sudden clarity hit me. Mommy was slipping away, and every second mattered. I turned to her, vulnerability brimming over. It was raw and unguarded. "Please, Mommy, we need you," I whispered into the silence, the words quivering with desperation. But it was Lila who lifted the map high again. "This leads to where the best smiles are, Mommy." The silence settled heavy as we waited. The room seemed to hush in anticipation. But then, without warning, the life monitor emitted a rapid series of beeps, and the room filled with urgency. "Code Blue!" the doctor shouted, rushing to Mommy as the panic swept back, cloaking everything in raw fear once more. Lila gasped, and my stomach twisted. In that moment, clarity shifted into frantic confusion, the reality of what was happening crashing into my chest. Kai instinctively stepped closer, and I felt the old threads of connection stir, but the stakes felt impossibly high. Was this an offering of hope, or just another broken promise littering our history? With the room swirling around me, torn between the past and the relentless present, I faced the impending storm. There would be no simple resolution as I struggled to keep Lila's innocent faith alive against the tide of uncertainty. What awaited us beyond this moment felt insurmountable, and I found myself grappling with the thought, was every adventure worth taking, even if it led to the most daunting places? The figure at the door remained, watching with a heavy heart as if they understood the magnitude of our battle. They waited for our next move, and so did I. The air in the hospital room thickened with tension, a tangible weight pressing down on us all as the urgency escalated. My heart raced in tandem with the machine's frantic beeping, each sound reminding me of the fragile line between life and heartache. I gripped Lila's hand tightly, feeling her small fingers tremble against my palm. Her wide eyes flickered from me to the doctor, hope fighting to stay alive even as panic burgeoned within me. "Mommy needs you," Lila shouted, her voice high and desperate, cutting through the cacophony of medical jargon and the frantic footsteps of nurses. The innocent plea ignited an ember of both anger and sorrow deep within me. How was I supposed to reassure her when I felt so lost myself? Kai's presence loomed large, and I felt the familiar battle rage within me, though his offer of help had stirred something I thought long buried. Memories of betrayal clung to the edges of my resolve. "How can you help her?" I shot at him, my voice raw as if the words themselves were blades. "What can you really do in this moment?" He didn't flinch at my aggression. Instead, he stepped closer, his determination a stark contrast to my fear. "Just give me a chance," he implored, his voice steady yet strained. "I have contacts, resources if we can get in touch with some of the best specialists enough." A sudden voice boomed from the hall, cutting through the climate of dread like lightning. It was the head physician, Dr. Harper, flanked by several nurses who appeared to share her urgency. "We need to stabilize her now. I need all hands on deck." I fell into silence, the reality crashing over me. They were right, our focus couldn't waver. Lila's hope clashed with the rising tide of despair swimming in my chest. "Mommy," I managed to whisper, my heart pitched in grief, "please, fight for us." As Dr. Harper moved swiftly to assess the situation, Lila clutched her magic map tighter still, murmuring to herself softly, "Mommy will smile, Mommy will smile." The mantra was as steady as a heartbeat, each word imbued with the faith that only a child possessed. I admired the resilience in her expression, though I knew she couldn't fully grasp the gravity of what surrounded us. The doctor barked rapid instructions, and in the melee, Kai inched closer to us, his eyes never leaving Lila. "Just let me be the bridge," he urged softly, almost in a whisper. "If you don't want me to help for her sake, let me do it for you." Pain echoed in those words like a distant thunderclap. How could he still somehow be the voice of reason, even wrapped in such chaos? With my heart reeling, I flicked a glance at him, searching his face, and caught a glimpse of something that felt unnervingly raw and real. But before I could respond, a sudden commotion beyond the doorway drew our attention. A figure rushed in, an older woman, frail yet fierce, her silver hair a chaotic frame to a visage lined with worry. My breath hitched as I recognized her. It was Linda's mother. "Where is she?" the woman demanded, a mixture of fear and strength radiating from her. I felt a wave of dread swell in my chest, the weight of her vulnerability mingled with my own, blurring the lines of blame and regret. "She's in here," I called out, a mix of emotions thrumming beneath the surface. I couldn't help it, I felt a surge of protective instinct crash over me as I watched the fragility in her stance, the way she clutched her purse, not just a handbag, but a shield to keep her strength together. Linda's mother rushed to the bedside, collapsing into a nearby chair with a wilted sigh, her eyes wild with worry and despair. "What's happening?" She needs to know I'm here." Her voice trembled, and looking at her, I suddenly understood something profound. Linda, my mother, had fought so hard to keep her family together, to keep us blissfully unaware of the battle she waged against her illness until now. Lila stood statuesque, watching the unfolding drama with wide eyes, her magic map still clasped like a lifeline in her tiny hands. "We can all help, can't we?" she said, and in that innocent moment, it felt as though the weight of the world seemed to rest on her small shoulders. I glanced between Linda's mother and Kai, their faces mirroring the tension, each of us standing on our own precipice of need. "There has to be something we can do together, something we can all fight for," I urged, desperate to pull everyone into a circle of solidarity. But just as I spoke, a sharp chime came from the monitors, a sound I dreaded. The machines began beeping even louder, an alarm cascading through the room like an unanswered prayer. My heart plummeted as chaos erupted once more. "Stabilize her now," Dr. Harper ordered, yanking my attention back to the urgency, all civilized quarrels and grievances dissipating in the face of a harsh reality. As Lila started to cry, a choke sound that cut through the commotion, I felt the anguish stretch outward like a taut wire in my soul. I stepped toward her, but before I could comfort her, a shocking revelation settled like a stone in my gut. "Wait," I said, the words bubbling up in panic. What if the map isn't just a piece of art?" In that moment of clarity, my heart raced at the implications. What if Lilith's whimsical creation pointed toward more than we had imagined, more than just comfort or a smile? Just as suddenly, the shadows of doubt clouding my vision began to shift, and I was left wondering, was there a path illuminated for us all, something leading us to reclaim what felt lost? The world around me seemed to pause, caught between the mounting tension and the intangible hope that Lilith's innocence seemed to weave into this dark fabric of our lives. But these thoughts, however beautiful, felt unwarranted against the ticking clock in the room. The stakes had never felt higher, and as we all stood teetering on the brink of breaking, I could only hope that whatever lay ahead wouldn't demand more than any of us were willing to give. The urgency of the medical team surged through the room and mixed with the chaos of emotions swirling in my chest. I could barely process Lilith's understanding and belief that her mother would smile, even as the situation spiraled. I caught sight of the monitor, every beep a reminder of the precious seconds streaming away from us, and it felt as though time itself had become an insistent enemy. "Just breathe, sweetheart," I whispered frantically, kneeling beside Lila as she clung to the magic map. Her face mirrored the terror roiling within me, and yet there was something fierce in her grip, a tiny anchor fighting against the raging tempest. "We're all in this together. We have to believe just like you do." Linda's mother sat nearby, her gaze pinched with despair as she fumbled through her purse. Each rustle of her belongings felt like another wave crashing against the shore. I wanted to comfort her, to say something wise and profound, but my own heart was splintering like glass. "I packed something," she murmured, almost to herself. Her hands trembled as she pulled out a faded photograph, one I recognized instantly, a picture of Linda as a child, beaming and carefree, with her arms slung around her mother. It was taken on one of those long-ago summers when laughter filled our days. The nostalgia hit me like a shockwave, and I could scarcely hold back tears. My baby girl needs to know I'm here, she said, tears pooling in her eyes. She needs to feel my love. Lila, ever attuned to the raw emotions around her, looked up. If we all hold hands and believe, maybe mommy will hear us, and she'll fight because we're cheering her on. The simplicity of her words cut through the noise. I glanced at Kai, who was readying himself to take action, eyes sharp with resolve. Maybe we could sew the fabric of love and hope together, even in our fractures. The human spirit could be a force unlike any other, and right now, it was churning within us, begging to shine through. Kai, I urged, my voice cracking with urgency, we need to connect with each other. More than the doctors or the machines, it's our love that can reach her. Let's create a circle. He nodded, immediately understanding, and without hesitation, he extended his hand toward Linda's mother. She hesitated for a moment, then met his grasp with desperation and solidarity. Lila joined hands with me, and before I knew it, I felt heartbeats echoing through our tiny circle. Me pulse steadily aligning with theirs, our breaths harmonizing in prayerful unity. As we formed an unbreakable bond, I felt an undeniable warmth enveloping us. We're here. We're all here, I whispered, feeling that love seeped deeper than I'd ever thought possible. The energy in this room, our bond, can reach her. She needs to know she's not alone. And then, at that moment, an incandescence filled the air. Lila chanted softly, her childish cadence manifesting a magic that seemed to brush against the walls of the room, wrapping around us like a gentle breeze. Mommy needs love, mommy needs us, mommy will smile. Each repetition grew louder, more fervent, and it echoed like an incantation through the open spaces, but suddenly, fate twisted the narrative. Dr. Harper's voice shattered through our circle, sharp as a scalpel. Everyone needs to step back. We're losing her. Panic erupted once more, but this time it felt different. Linda's mother grabbed the photo and clutched it to her heart, whispering brokenly, please, let her know she is loved. Whatever shadows loomed over us began to shift dangerously, hovering with newfound tension. In that desperate moment, Lila leaned closer to us. The map says we have to believe, she insisted, her small voice fragile yet resolute. Mommy will fight to smile. If we believe together, it can happen. Her words reached a crescendo in my heart. A sudden vision sparked to life. Lila, do you think the map has a way for us to find her? Can it guide us? It could be a sign. Panic mingled with my desperate hope as I gripped the edges of her magic creation, while the clock ticked on in the background, an ominous reminder of each fleeting moment. Kai's eyes lit with understanding. What if Lilith's magic map leads us to a way to help Linda more than we've imagined? It's a fractal of love, a printed guide. It wouldn't just end at fighting for today, it could map out a journey toward healing. I felt the weight of realization settle heavily within me, and just as we drew breath to act upon it, a new alarm blared within the room, a piercing sound that sent icy tendrils of fear coursing through my veins. Dr. Harper's face fell into a mask of urgency, eyes darting around the room, all at once standing on the precipice of hope and despair. I realized the difference between fight or flight, and here we were, summoned to act. And then, just when I was about to call us to arms, a new revelation cut through the tension like a knife. A figure rushed into the room, breathless and frantic. It was someone I had never expected to see, someone whose presence had implications I was not ready to face. Their wide-eyed expression met mine, and without a single word, I felt the shudder of fear they carried, mingling with a truth that threatened to dismantle everything I thought I knew. Mommy's sick, but she'll still smile if you come. With those words hovering, a dawning horror settled in my chest. Who was this newcomer? What did they know? And more importantly, what would this mean for Lila and her mother? The thread that held our world together was unraveling, and I was standing at the edge, enveloped in shadows and the desperate sheen of hope. A fracture had appeared in our lives, and its fissure was just beginning to widen. As the familiar shadow crossed the threshold of the emergency room, time seemed to fracture. The frenetic hum of machines lost their grip on reality as I stared at the person standing there, seemingly out of an echoing past. Sophie, Linda's estranged sister. Years had softened her edges, yet the wild spark of mischief that once gleamed in her eyes now mirrored a somber urgency. What are you doing here? I asked, my words barely audible against the clamor of alarm. The depth of disbelief erupted within me, layered with a confusion I couldn't fathom. I didn't know what was going on until just now. I saw the accident report, she answered, her voice trembling. I came as fast as I could. Why didn't you reach out sooner? I demanded, clenching my fists to stifle the rush of anguish threatening to pour out. Sophie and Linda had been distant for years, an estrangement cloaked in family disputes that had spiraled beyond control. Now, here she stood, a specter from a troubled past, just when we needed every ounce of strength to hold on to hope. Sophie stepped closer, her expression darkening. "I didn't want her to know I was back in town after everything," she whispered, her eyes flicking to the medical team that was desperately working to stabilize Linda. "But I can't just stand by." Lila's grip on my hand tightened, instinctively sensing the shift in the air. I could see Sophie fraying at the seams, torn between the duty of family and the heavy baggage of their history. "She needs us," Lila said softly, her innocent heart heartedly full of courage. "We all need each other." In that moment of intersection, I could feel the multiple threads of emotion weaving through the room. The tangible tension of unresolved family dynamics wrapped around us, creating an atmosphere thick with unsaid words and painful memories. If we were to stand a chance, we needed to confront not only our fears but also the unspoken ghosts lingering between Sophie and Linda. "Let's form our circle again together," I urged, my voice steady despite the whirlwind in my chest. "We can't let our pasts define the present. We need to be strong for Linda, for Lila." Sophie nodded slowly, her face transforming from apprehension to resolve. As she slipped her hand into ours, the circle shifted again, pulsating with the energy of our connection, the raw urgency of families under duress, striving for hope. I searched her eyes for something, a flicker of understanding, some recognition of family love, but all I could see was pain. The hospital room seemed to shrink as our collective hope swirled around us, but just as I felt the warmth solidify, the room filled with a stark silence, cut painfully by the next words that fell from Sophie's lips. "I just came from speaking with Mom. She said she wants to see Lila first, before it's too late." The gravity of her words hung thick in the air, testing the strength of our shared bond. A blade of fear lodged itself in my throat as Lila looked up at me with wide eyes, woven between confusion and fear. "Mommy, she wants to smile at me?" Lila's voice trembled, each syllable painfully raw. Sophie nodded, heartbroken. "Mom believes you can help her fight. That your song can reach her." My heart shattered then, scattering into pieces I couldn't gather. The reality settled upon us like a blanket of ice. Lila deserved sunshine, laughter, and the joy of childhood, not to be faced with the anguish of knowing her mother could slip away. "Do I have to go?" Lila asked, her voice shaking as she hid her face against my side, her small body trembling with the weight of sadness no child should bear. But deep down, she also held a tenderness born of hope, a child willing to reach for the untouchable. As I leaned down to hold her close, I felt caught between the razor-thin line of protection and the fierce urge to let her shine, to bring her brave light into the darkest corners where fear loomed. "If we can believe together, maybe it will be enough," I whispered, trying to stifle my own tears. Yet I could feel the heavy tide pulling me toward despair again, but the shift that followed was palpable. We all tightened our grip, each of us a buoy anchored against a vast ocean of uncertainty. "I'm here." "We are here," I urged, hoping to ignite a spark in Sophie too. "Let's believe for Linda, for Lila, and for all the moments still waiting to be created." Doctor Harper rushed back in, urgency etched across his brow. "I need to know if you're ready to let Lila see Linda." It could mean everything, for both of them. A part of me clenched tightly with the fear of what lay on the other side, but then there was Lila, full of magic, still holding on to her belief, fragile yet unbreakable. She nodded, squeezing my hand tightly. "I have to go, please," she declared, voice steady with a strength beyond her years. "Mommy needs me to fight with that." We stepped toward the precipice of an uncharted road, looming uncertainly before us. As they led Lila toward her mother, I felt the fragmented pieces of my heart dance precariously on the brink of hope and sorrow. Would it really matter? Would Linda hear her daughter's love ringing out amid the chaos of machines? But as the door swung shut behind them, sealing in the heavy emotions, I realized another conflict arose, a truth I had skirted around but now had to face. Sophie's arrival was only the beginning. There was unfinished business waiting, grievances that demanded acknowledgement. And somewhere in it all, I sensed an intertwining fate that could either unite us or lay bare the chasms we'd forged. An unexpected cell phone buzzed in my pocket, jerking my thoughts away from the suffocating reverie. I pulled it out, heart racing as I saw the name flashing across the screen, a name I hadn't seen in years. The world tipped dangerously, and the lingering threads of my emotions tightened as I prepared to answer. As I stared at the screen, the name seemed like a fleeting specter from a past I had thought safely buried. Emily. My best friend from high school, the one who had always been there through the chaos of youth, the one who had left town without a trace and with whom I had lost contact when lifetimes and the world started picking at the seams of our bond. I answered with a tremor in my voice, "Emily?" "Hey, it's me." Her voice sounded calm, steady, but the distance between us felt astoundingly vast. "I just heard about Linda. I can't believe she's in the hospital. Are you okay?" A simple question, yet it unraveled a torrent of emotion that surged through me. I'm trying to be strong, for Lila, for Linda," I managed, swallowing the lump in my throat. I needed to focus, I needed to be clear. Yet her voice brought out memories I had tucked away in the far corners of my mind, laughter, secrets, and the bond that had defined my teenage years. "I'm so sorry. I just got back in town, and everything is so overwhelming right now," Emily said, her voice softening. I wish I could be there to help. The sincerity in her words touched something deep within me, and for a moment, the burden of everything else fell away. "I could really use a friend, Emily," I admitted, and as the admission left my lips, it felt like an unexpected dam breaking, flooding the space with both vulnerability and relief. "They'll be there soon," she promised. Just as the call ended, a cold shadow poured through my chest. Thoughts of Linda's fading heartbeat and Lila's fragile hope pressed heavily on my chest, but mingling among them was a delicate thread of something foreign, anticipation, perhaps? The air trembled with the possibilities Emily's return might bring. My mind wandered back to Lila and the door that had closed behind her moments before. Images of her tiny figure standing with conviction, her heart now tethered to her mother's, flooded my thoughts. My own heart ached to see her innocence threatened by something so massive as illness. Yet my heart also swelled with pride in her bravery, a call to arms that begged for love to penetrate the shadows. And just then, I saw Sophie again, pacing back and forth in the hallway, her hands trembling against the worn fabric of her jeans as if attempting to ground herself in the daunting reality. I felt a sudden urge to reach out, to bridge the gap that unspoken words had kept between us all these years. "You okay?" I asked, arms crossed to hide my own dilemma. Sophie looked up, almost startled, but then her mask of confidence crumbled slightly. "I'm just trying to process everything. I can't believe Mom wants to see Lila first. I am scared. Scared of how Mom might react to me being here," she admitted, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We all have our ghosts, don't we?" I observed quietly, realizing the bonds of sisterhood that remained intact even in silence. "But it's your chance now. She may need you, Sophie." "More than she needs me, more than any of us." Sophie inhaled deeply, her expression shifting as she seemed to glean strength from my words. "What if she doesn't want me?" The vulnerability in her voice cut deep. I shared sorrow that resonated with my own fears. "Then we'll face that together," I declared, reaching for her shoulder and squeezing it tightly. "But if you don't take this chance, you may never know." Just then, the door opened slightly, and the nurse stood in the doorway, her eyes darting between us as if she held the outcome of our fates in her hands. "If anyone wants to join Lila and her mother, now is the time." My stomach dropped as adrenaline surged through me, each heartbeat galloping wildly alongside my thoughts. "Sophie, this is it," I urged, pulling away from the comfort of her side. "Wait," she faltered, looking simultaneously terrified and determined. "What if Mom is too weak to accept me? What if she doesn't even remember me?" "I don't think you choose when you're family," I replied, clutching her hand. "And I think Lila is moving the mountains for you. If this moment could echo through time, wouldn't it matter more than the scars you both carry?" I paused, realizing my own fears echoed back. Perhaps the calls we didn't answer for ourselves, the unmade decisions and lost chances colored the world we would navigate now. Sophie's eyes held a flicker of determination, and I could see her inhale deeply, preparing her heart for the torrent of possibilities that lay within the room. As we stepped towards the threshold together, a manic whirlwind forged by uncertainty tangled around us, but upon crossing into the light-filtered room where Linda lay, I believed it would bind us anew. Each step bore the weight of fate, like life itself hinging on this moment. Entering the room, though we did not know how deeply love would be tested or how long healing might take, we knew the reality we now faced was utterly unlike anything. As we all stood transfixed, bearing witness to the freight train of history that led to this single moment, when I turned to Lila, who looked between us, holding her mother's frail hand, I could see that she wasn't thinking of defeat. She was already giving the world her light, a dazzling glimmer that promised tomorrow. But then came the chilling sound of the heart-monitoring machine, a sudden alarming beat that crescendoed, filling the air with fear that shut out hope. Doctor! I screamed as the world trembled, unsure of how to get through, but amongst the clamor, I caught something from the most sealed corners of my life, a memory cascading from the past, whispering with an urgency I had ignored for too long. Whatever would happen next was poised on the brink of eternity. The walls felt as though they were closing in, and the blaring alarm echoed in my mind long after I had fallen silent. I turned to Lila, barely holding herself together, and my heart ached at the sight of her small figure trembling under the weight of reality. Lila, I whispered, crouching down to her eye level, it's going to be okay. We're here for you. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and unyielding, a mixture of grief and fierce hope. Mommy needs you, too, she said, her voice a fragile whisper. In that moment, I understood, with a startling clarity, the truth behind her innocent words. For children, the unyielding expectation of love remains. In the midst of crisis, I found myself reflecting on my own childhood, how I had always believed in the magic of being seen and loved. Emily's voice, the way it had rekindled so many memories, flashed through my mind again, and I felt the need to reach across time yet again. I needed her wisdom, her strength. We had fought battles together before, and maybe just maybe you could navigate this one. As if summoned by thought, the door swung open once more, revealing Emily. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me first, glowing with unvoiced emotions, and instantly her presence seemed like a balm on my heart. I'm here, she said, her voice steady. I came as soon as I could. Emily. I breathed, feeling the weightlessness that often comes when a long-lost friend returns. We're Lila's mom. She needs all the help we can give. Emily stepped forward, her gaze landing directly on Lila, who was clasping her mother's limp hand. And she's got you, Lila. You're so brave. That small connection, Emily's warmth radiating towards Lila, moved something deep within the girl, and her shoulders squared a little more. Will she be okay? Lila asked, her doe eyes filled with both doubt and hope. Emily knelt down beside her, her hand brushing Lila's dark curls gently. That's the thing about love. It can be complicated and scary, but it also makes the impossible feel possible. Your mother is surrounded by love right now, and that counts for a lot. In a world where wounds run deep and words can often be empty, Emily's kindness flooded the room like sunlight streaming through a window. I felt a small flicker of hope ignite, like a candle catching fire against the overwhelming darkness. At that moment, something shifted. The alarming beeping of the heart monitor faded into the background. As if pushed by unseen hands, we leaned into each other, the closeness forming unspoken promises of support, of healing. I caught Sophie's gaze across the room, and the look she wore mirrored my own, a hopeful yearning mingled with the dread of the future. I want to see her, she finally whispered, stepping forward. The softness of her voice was both a plea and a declaration. I want her to know I'm here. Go on, I urged, my heart pounding against my ribs. I knew that fear could paralyze, but love had the power to surge. You'll never regret being there for her. Sophie hesitated but took a decisive breath, and the strength of our connection seemed to carry her forward. She entered the room fully, engaging with that almost sacred space where family ties blurred into healing bonds. Words were slippery as Sophie approached her mother. I felt the tension rise as Linda remained still, her frail form surrounded by machines that expressed her struggle. Mom, it's me, Sophie said finally, her voice breaking the silence with fragile hope. It's Sophie. I'm here. As if in response, Linda's eyelids fluttered just the slightest bit, the faintest of movements that breathed life into the room. I held my breath, aching for a miracle that felt so out of reach, yet so close. But just then, Lila tugged at my sleeve, pulling me down to meet her level. Auntie? What if she's nervous? What if she forgets me? Her tiny voice wrapped around my heart like a vine, squeezing it gently but tightening with fear. No one can ever forget such a bright light, I reassured her, brushing away the tears pooling in my eyes. Your mommy loves you fiercely. No matter what, you are always in her heart, even when she's not present. As I spoke, something deep within me trembled, a raw honesty unfolding, the uncertainty of the situation clawing at the edges of my skin. Because life had taught me so cruelly that we never truly know the time we are given, nor how it will bend and shift through our fingertips. Suddenly, the door swung open again, interrupting our fragile moment. A doctor rushed in, his eyes darting to the beeping machine. We need to stabilize her. Family, please step back. Panic rushed through me, the gravity of the situation slammed into the walls around us, creating an inescapable sense of urgency that washed over Lila's tiny frame. "She's going to be okay, right?" Lila's voice trembled, begging, clinging to hope like a lifeboat, but as the doctor moved to stabilize Linda, the chaos in the room turned mundane and gut-wrenching, machines flickering, voices rising in crescendo, love struggling against a tide of despair. The sound of silence came crashing over me, drowning out Lila's whispered prayers. And in that moment, the chilling reality clouded my heart. The love we shared, the memories sewn into our very beings might not be enough to alter the miserable course fate had begun to chart. Drawing in a shaky breath, I turned back to Emily, whose eyes held a sorrowful weight. "We can't lose her, can we?" The question lingered like mist, laden with fear, but before she could respond, a tremble coursed through the room, jolting us all as the monitor flatlined. The air grew suffocatingly tense, the world held its breath, frozen in the fragility of existence, and then Linda's heart began to race, and the chaos erupted once again, a whirlwind of voices shouting commands. But all I could hear was Lila's broken whisper, "Mommy, please, don't leave." Meth thread of hope began to fray, unraveling against the dark specter of loss. As time slowed, another sound broke through. The door opened once more, and a figure stepped in, carrying the weight of secrets too heavy for the fragile moment we all clung to. Just beyond the threshold, a shadow of the past stepped forward, a surprise I hadn't anticipated, someone who could tip the scales of love and devastation and drown us all in anew. The figure stepped into the room, the clarity of who it was hitting me like a shockwave. A man I hadn't seen in years, yet one I would never forget. Tom. My father. The chaos spiraled around us like a violent storm as I stood locked in disbelief. The anger that had festered between us over the years bled away, drowned out by a mixture of shock and an old longing for reconciliation. "What are you doing here?" I breathed, furious and confused. But the urgency in his eyes spoke louder than my accusations. "I heard about Linda," he said, his voice raw and filled with emotion, as if he carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid apologies. "I came to help. I wasn't ready for this. Not now, when everything was teetering on the brink, when the chaos felt like a living entity threatening to swallow us whole." Yet, there he stood, seemingly transformed by desperation. "Help?" I scoffed, my anger flaring unbidden. "After all this time, do you really think you can just waltz back in like nothing's happened?" But while that anger was surfacing, there was a flicker of something deeper, a willingness to forgive that felt like a warm light breaking through the clouds. Lila caught my eye, her small fingers still clutching the magic map, which had become a silent testament of hope. "Auntie," she whispered, and in her voice was embedded the lingering belief that perhaps forgiveness could be woven into the very fabric of our shared narrative. "Please," Tom urged, his voice steady yet laced with fear. "I know I haven't been there. I failed you all, but this isn't about me. It's about Linda. I'm willing to help however I can. I have resources, connections." I hesitated, battling my own instincts to shut him down. But as I looked back at the frail figure of my mother lying helplessly amid machines that buzzed ominously, memories washed over me of nighttime stories, laughter, and warmth, the real, tangible love Linda had poured into our lives. She had fought through so much for us, to keep our family together despite the wreckage that divided us. "Lila, we need to decide if we will let him in," I said slowly, the decision feeling heavier than ever, the implications sprawling outwards like the branches of an ancient tree. Lila's eyes were wide, her innocence undeterred by the grief that had stolen our laughter for so long. "Let's give him a chance, Auntie. Maybe he can make a real adventure happen. Like the knights and the treasure." Tom stepped closer, vulnerability laid bare beneath his rough exterior. "Just let me try," he whispered again, desperation thick with emotion. I felt my heart swell and break simultaneously, feeling as if I were teetering on the edge of a cliff. I needed to protect my sister, my heart, yet there was always the chance that threads of hope could weave even the torn pieces of our past into something beautiful again. With a deep breath and a resolve I didn't fully feel, I nodded. "Okay, but you have to prove it. For her sake, and for Lila." His expression softened, filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he breathed, his eyes shimmering with unvoiced emotion. "I promise I won't waste this chance." The moment felt charged, a breath of fresh air amidst the suffocating tension in the room, flickering between hope and uncertainty. "Let's gather what we can, everyone, all of us together," I insisted, feeling the swell of our united strength. "This is about fighting for Linda, fighting to mend our family and create a way forward where love finds a way to conquer despair. We all held hands tightly, encircling Lila as she closed her eyes, her tiny voice rising in gentle reassurance. Mommy, we're all rooting for you, all together. It was a chant that resonated softly against the whir of machines and the tense murmurs of nurses. As Lila's voice melded with our collective breaths, I watched as Linda's heart rate steadied momentarily, our love echoing through the room as the storm outside still rumbled. But perhaps, just perhaps, the tide had turned, and then, like a phoenix from the ash, we felt the flicker of possibility ignited deep within. In that thin, hanging moment between life and death, I dared to believe once more in the power of love, in the magic of family, and in the possibility that forgiveness could light the way even through the darkest paths we had walked. As we joined Lilith's mantra and felt the fierce determination envelop us, something shifted in the room. A miraculous ripple of energy began to bleed through the fluorescent light, coiling around us all. And then I felt it, a lightening of the burden sitting heavy on my chest, dissipating like morning mist as a renewed strength surged between us all. Mommy will heal, Lila insisted, a declaration that rang clear like a chime. A warmth flooded the room, refracting through each of us as we stood firmly bound by our love, a binding stronger than blood, stitched together by shared hearts. And at that moment, I understood how threads of our past had woven into the present. It was our tragedies that bound us deeper together, our collective history tracing through pain and hope, breaking barriers that once felt insurmountable. My heart raced wildly as we prepared for the possibilities that lay just ahead. Life could change, love could prevail, and maybe, just maybe, Mommy would smile again, weaving us toward a future anew. Tears streamed down my face as I bent down to Lila, her belief and innocence rekindling flames of hope deep within my soul. We're going to write the most incredible story, together, I promised her. And as I looked into her trusting gaze, I felt the echoes of every past heartbreak transforming into the threads of a beautiful new beginning, resonating through the air. In the heartbeat that followed, I glanced at the map in her hands, its colors vibrant and alive, pulsating with the promise of adventure and light. The journey to healing had already begun. And as we rooted for Linda, the significance of family began to illuminate the darkness, becoming a haven thick with resolute love, a truth that was carved not just from our present struggles, but from the very soil born of empathy, healing, and heartfelt connection in our intertwined odyssey. With Lilith's gentle voice leading us toward the dawn of new horizons and the fragile yet fierce gratitude starting to settle within me, surrounded by love, all I could whisper was, we are all here. Together. Forever. And with that, I knew the adventure had just begun.